Welcome back to an extra special episode of Minus 16. And if you're watching the podcast, you'll notice that Daniel is fast asleep at the moment. Well, he's not on screen fast asleep, but it's the wee small hours over in Australia. Because once again, we're going around the world with Tom Buck from, I'm going to say Arizona. Is that kind of right? Or am I miles out?
One state over, California.
There we go. There we go. So we couldn't quite make all the time zones work. So Tom and Alex, I know, have spoken before, but we're just going to have a really good chat about everything to do with running a channel, I think, because I know, Tom, listening to your Enthusiasm project, that's a massive passion of yours, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's been, that podcast is 6+ years now. Super fun.
And I suppose what we should do, just to keep things in line with your channel, is talk about the mics we're using. I know you always start your podcast with the mic of the week. So what mic have we got you on this week?
Believe it or not, I am a white guy in my 30s on a podcast using a Shure SM7B. So I know that's rare. Doesn't happen a lot. Yeah. I do love the SM7B, and I do like using it when I'm like doing something like this, where I'll be on somebody else's show or podcast or stream, and I'm not sure what they'll be using, because it just seems to kind of fit in with whatever anyone else is using really well. So it's kind of my go-to, like, everything mic.
A safe bet, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's 2 out of 3. I'm the odd one out. This is my old radio mic, an Audio Technica AT2035, and it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's got used to my voice. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but mics just seem to bed in a bit, and they get used to your voice and so on. So I still haven't gone the SM7B route. I know I'm, again, the only white middle-aged male on the internet not using an SM7B. Maybe my time will come. So I know, Alex, you had a couple of questions you wanted to get early on talking about the sort of side of YouTube. So do you want to start the ball rolling, and then we'll carry on from there?
Yeah, I think it's almost like a follow-up, really, because last time, I was just checking, Tom, the last time we spoke, it was exactly 3 years ago, and it was with Patrick. We had a podcast. Yeah. We kind of hit pause on the podcast. I think we called it the Tube Life or something. But in that conversation, I think you were either just about to hit 100K or just over it.
That was probably, 3 years ago was probably just about to,
yeah, and you know, it's kind of interesting to see how how much we've or influenced by all your videos. I mean, I've watched so many of your videos to get things like this, and my other mic up here for my normal videos. Everywhere you look, there's an influence from you. But I think as your channel grew and you progressed as well in your career, I remember kind of around that time being the time when you were going full time as well and making that decision. So I think, kind of give us an update on the last 3 years and how that's been as a for your channel, as a business as well, how that's going. Just to see how you progress.
Sure, yeah. Oh my gosh, actually, yeah, this is perfect timing. Today, 4 years ago today, was my last day at my regular teaching job.
Wow.
And so 4 years ago tomorrow was my first day doing this full time. But when we talked, I'd been doing it about a year. That's crazy. It has been. So here's what's kind of funny is when that happened, the most common question that people asked was like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to do like 5 videos a week? Are you going to like try to hire a team? Are you going to get a studio, all this stuff? And I was like, no, I don't want to do any of that. Not that those things are bad, but that wasn't my goal. And my goal was like, I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, but instead of like not having any time at all, because I have 2 full-time jobs, I just want to have 1 full-time job and then like be a person and stuff. And that has been what has happened, which is wonderful. So it's been like Alex, your channel's growing way faster than mine, it seems, but I think there's really taken off.
There's times in the year where it goes really fast, and it depends on. I mean, it's kind of what I'm doing is handheld devices, most like consumer stuff.
Right.
So when there's nothing being launched, like right now, it's actually quite slow. But there's peaks and troughs, like like many channels.
Yeah.
But I think you came from the safety world of being employed because you were a teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So presumably, not knowing that the US system, but I mean that I'm assuming gives you health benefits, and I know healthcare from everything here is ridiculously so. Things like that when you're going out on your own, self-employed as we call it here in the UK. That must be daunting as well. Had you ever run your own business before?
No, I very much like wanted to be a teacher from the time I was in high school. That's what I went to college for. I had, I've worked since I was 15, but it was always working for somebody, like being an employee somewhere, being eventually getting a salary, getting a nice tenured teaching position, which is great because when I was a teacher here, every month my paycheck is the same. So it doesn't matter if it's a month like I think October is a month where there's like no holidays, no breaks. It's just rough. You get paid the exact same as you do in December when half of the month is Christmas break. So there's that thing of just like maybe you'll actually even get a little more sometimes if you take on a stipend to coach something or be an advisor to a club or something. But you kind of know, like, my paycheck's always this. It doesn't matter. Versus especially something that involves online content creation. It's not even like a business. Like, well, I open my shop these hours, I sell this amount of merchandise every day usually. It's like feast or famine sometimes. Health insurance, obviously I live in the worst place in the world maybe when it comes to that. And that was a huge thing, was literally like, how do I get health insurance because it's tied to my job, and how can I afford health insurance because it's insanely expensive to get something where you can like see a doctor when you need to see a doctor, and not 3 months later. So those things were really tough to navigate. Fortunately, a thing that did really help was I was kind of at a point where like the channel was earning similar monthly revenue to what I was making teaching, which felt good. But teaching did have all those other benefits. It had retirement and it had health insurance and all that. So I was feeling like the channel needed to be making more before I could ever make that full-time leap, not realizing that teachers, of course, only get paid 10 months out of the year, not 12, at least here. So in the summer months, when you see a teacher like on vacation, they're actually like unemployed. Yeah, you can, there's ways you got to save throughout the year to do that. And I was like, wait a minute, my YouTube channel operates 12 months out of the year. So I'm already making 2 months more worth of salary. So it was already like, wait, I already got a pay raise. I didn't realize it because I'm bad at math. So
what did you teach out of interest?
I taught digital media for most of the time, which is great. It's basically like what I do on my YouTube channel. Originally, though, I started as an English teacher. So kind of.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I do remember Sane. Yeah.
That's why I'm bad at math.
That's the excuse, and you're sticking to it.
Yeah.
So it was obviously a kind of a leap into the unknown then, in every respect. And you said you would, it was that pivot point you were just about making the same. But then when Alex and I were talking earlier on today, because we're going to talk about your ethics statement as well, which we know that you're very hot on who you take on board to work with and to be part of the channel. So bearing that in mind, then money grabbing isn't your first some channels we know are out there just basically as shopping channels.
Right.
Every week a video with XYZ in it. Whereas you're not that at all. Now, we know that that's where the better money comes from. So are you purely relying on AdSense? It can't surely be, because that, again, it fluctuates so very much, doesn't it?
Yeah. AdSense is crazy. It's funny when you're like, let's talk to you about business, because I am the worst at like the YouTube business side of things from like a systemic point of view. I do a combination of things. So there's AdSense is a big one. Affiliate stuff for me, just because I am a gear focused channel. So even without having to highlight like the newest releases and things, just because like I focus on gear a lot because that's what I like. It just lends itself naturally to affiliate links because you need to put links to the gear anyway so people can find it. It might as well be an affiliate link. That's probably my biggest revenue source. And then there's, like I mentioned, I was working on a course and stuff, or redoing a course. So those are great, and that feels a little more in my control because it's like not my own platform, but kind of, and it's
your product, right?
Yeah, I don't have like a physical product or anything, and the course kind of scratches my teaching itch. So those things come together. I do know for sure I'm leaving money on the table. I'm not like allergic to money. I don't hate money.
But I need it.
I would like more of it. But it's just how you go about getting the more of it. And that's kind of a thing is, I think if I were to just maximize every way of making money with the channel, take every sponsorship, every brand deal, every whatever, I would see like income go through the roof, but very quickly, I would guess within a year, I would be like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'd be burnt out, or the channel, like the really cool people that come to the channel and the audience that's built around it, they would probably not be into it anymore, and they would kind of fall off, and it wouldn't be sustainable long term. And that's what I really want, is to be able to do this as long as I possibly can, even if that means maybe not, getting to that Mr. Beast level of money and fame and insanity.
It's such a crazy. I mean, I find myself even now kind of having to find the right balance, and I struggle with it. I mean, what you said is exactly right. The minute you put a sponsored video out, even though the product is something that you trust and you've tested yourself and you like the product, it still feels, as you're creating it, the content, you feel like, okay, I'm becoming a little bit of a shill here, and you are hurting the audience. So there's no question about it, because you can see in the views go low, and there's no point actually trying to force it down people's throats.
Right.
The reality is, to rent a studio, to pay for the rent for here, for kind of the equipment and all of that, to run the channel, I have sometimes to say yes to some of those deals that ideally, I'd say in a year's time, I'd love to be in a position where I pick and choose the brands, and they would work really well with the content. I think that's kind of the dream scenario, where, you have a video planned and what brands would fit that video, rather than, kind of
right,
where I find myself sometimes answering an email because there's an opportunity, and then trying to create the content to fit that opportunity. And that's really not a good way to go about it, I think.
That's a tough place to be, for sure. Yeah.
Which fits. I was just looking at some of your recent podcasts, and there's one that particularly resonated with me: the objective, subjective.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was one of those ones I actually went back and listened to twice, because there's quite a lot of information, particularly I think if you're in the business at all, it really did cut, because it's that fine line that you're trying to deliver something subjectively, but equally be objective. And I know people have said, "Oh, you're just a one-out boy for Road," and that everything that Road does, you'll just immediately love. And we've all had that. And how do you deal with that then?
Yeah, that's something that I was trying to figure out, because it's sort of that thing of like, that's what people will say in the comment section, is like, "Oh, you're just a fanboy," or it's not even, it goes like beyond shill. It is just like, this company does anything and you love it, or they think a company's paying you when a company is never paying you. Believe it or not, Rode has not ever paid me for anything. But other companies have, that I don't talk about very often, because it's like they pay me, because they pay me less, but because like I just don't use their stuff as often. So like, it just like, Rode is the thing that just kind of sticks out as one of those examples. But that's kind of it, is like, that's what I'm enthusiastic about. And it depends on, so like the episode of the podcast you're talking about, it depends on where you're coming from with your channel. I think there's some people who are like Alex, I think, is maybe a good example. If you're doing like mobile handheld tech, you are in a position where you might want to cover things, like it's cell phone release season, and it's like you are looking at everything that's coming out and comparing everything, and that does kind of lend itself to an audience expectation of being more objective, like the role of a journalist. Like, here's what's happening, here's how it is, this is how it goes together, maybe with like a bit of editorial, is that editorial? Whatever. A bit of your opinion thrown in. Versus, like in my situation, I definitely don't get the boost of covering all that like really popular stuff that comes out, which I know, like from a business standpoint, would be the good thing to do. They just kind of pick and choose, like, I'm interested in this thing right now. And you see it happen sometimes. Like I covered a wireless mic, the Hollyland Lark, which I thought was really cool. And I bought it and I made video on it just because I was interested in it. And I published a video coincidentally on the same day that they released a new version.
All right.
Alex,
and I had
videos
no
on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone was like, you missed the new one. You missed the new one. I was like, I actually don't care about the new one, because it has some features I'm not interested in. I'm interested in this one. That's why I made the video on this one. And so that point of view, like being the enthusiast point of view, lets you be a little more subjective. But I think the key there is admitting that, like, I've made videos where I'm super critical of Rode. I've done podcasts where I'm super critical of Rode, but I've also been super clear that, like, I like them. I like the products. I like the philosophy. I like the people at the company. I want them to succeed. So even when I'm critical, it is a place of like, a coach telling an athlete, like, they're being hard on them because they want them to be better, kind of thing, versus, a company that I have no interest in. It's just like, oh, I'll just never talk about that thing because I don't care about it. And I don't want to spend my time with something that I think kind of sucks.
Yeah. It's funny. I think there's a similarity there in my content. I cover a lot of smartphones, and a lot of them are brands that I probably wouldn't use on a day-to-day. So like I said, it's more of a try and test it and just report back on an objective way what I like about it, what I think could be improved or whatever. But I can't help myself. I think when it comes to, for example, Samsung, is very similar to what you described your relationship with Rode being. I can say to them, and sometimes face to face, like, this is rubbish, I don't like this, and that's my opinion. And I will say that in my video, but doesn't stop people from coming in and saying, oh, and very much like Rode, Samsung never paid me a penny. But I do appreciate that they include me in their releases. They invite me to their events to talk about the new things coming up. So that helps almost like indirectly to have that early access. And I feel free to criticize them. And, I'm actually just editing a video where I actually compare them with the iPhone and criticize some parts of it. But I don't feel like I'll be blacklisted or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've experienced that before, where you were sent something to review and you did your job, you reviewed it, and then because you criticized it, you never sent it again. And I think we've seen like Gerald and Dunn being like that happened to him before. And I don't know if you experienced it.
That's a great question, because I think the best companies, like you mentioned with Samsung or Rode, they are the ones that like, we want to hear the feedback. And like, they have confidence in themselves. They're not that worried that like one YouTuber is going to take them down with a negative review or something, and they'd rather just make a good product. And they know that by letting you just approach it however you're going to approach it, that is the more authentic thing. Because I was going to go on a whole thing. Sometimes you will talk to companies that want to do sponsored things, and they're like, it's almost like companies will approach you to do something sponsored, and instead of just saying, hey, this is what we want to do, your channel, your audience, your style, do it that way, they almost dictate everything. And it's very clear that like they're not interested in your style, your perspective. They're just trying to get a gateway to your audience. And it's like, absolutely not. No way. The best ones are when people are like, do your thing with this, which is risky from the company's point of view, because obviously they can get burned, or you can find people who just want to get free products and disappear into the night. But I have found the companies that I've been very picky about who I work with. The ones I have worked with have all been very excellent. There have been a few, even from those, where they have sent me stuff that I didn't like, or it didn't work well for me, and I didn't like make videos trashing it, because sometimes I think it's just user preference or user error even. But I tell them, I say like, hey, this is how I feel about this. Sometimes I'll send the thing back, or whatever. As far as not getting anything, because the thing with me is like, I really don't make negative videos, just because I kind of don't want to. Like, it takes so much work to make a video that if I get something and it's terrible, I just don't want to spend the time with it to like make a video about it. If I feel like something, which is maybe only ever happened once or twice, kind of, if I ever feel like something is like a ripoff or a scam, or people like are ill-informed about something, that's when I would want to, almost like a public service announcement, make a video about something negative. So I haven't really done that, where I've like criticized something and then the people are like, oh, we're never sending you anything again. More what happens is they'll send something and it's not for me, or I never make a video about it, and then they're just like, well, we're not going to send you any more stuff because you don't make videos about the stuff we send you, which is completely fine. Like, that's totally fine by me.
Funny what you said about the user error bit as well, and sometimes you just get a bad unit, and I've kind of I should listen to my own advice sometimes. So I remember 2-3 years ago, being the one kind of almost trying to be sensationalist a little bit. It's kind of, oh, this is wrong, and kind of make a video about something that I kind of knew that it was either a one-off or maybe a bug, in the software. But even with the iPhone recently, I kind of held back releasing this video that I'm releasing now almost 2 months later, because I knew there was something wrong with my own device. And almost like there's no point kind of trashing a product just for views, right? I think I'd much rather now, with a more mature head, kind of say, I still think there's something, inferior about it, and I'll put my spin on my opinion and stuff. But I'm kind of glad that I didn't just use what I would have done 3 years ago, which would have probably got more views and, more subscribers even. But it's worth something, like you said, sometimes just kind of, no point being negative just for the sake of it.
Yeah. And that's like, including your experience of like, I got this thing. If you include that you had an issue with it, that's super valid, but also acknowledging that like, I don't think this is something everyone's going to deal with. I've done that a few times too, where like I got a microphone I was reviewing and it was a condenser that you speak in on the side. And for some reason mine was backwards, which doesn't matter. You just turn it around, but like, it's very confusing because the side you're supposed to speak into is not the side. And so there's all these comments where people are like, you're talking to the microphone backwards, but it sounds right. And I'm like, no. Mine is built backwards and I don't know why.
It's interesting because normally, of course, it's just Alex, myself, and Daniel. So 3 individuals come together and we do this podcast. But it's great talking to you that is a podcast because, again, it was one of your episodes I was listening to recently and it just made me feel a whole lot better when you're talking about, look, views on podcasts are very different to YouTube videos. And it was kind of like if you're in that percent that's getting 200-300 views regularly, you're actually doing pretty well. And it was a great point you made. And I hadn't really stopped to give it that much thought.
Yeah, that is, I forget the exact statistics, but and they've probably changed to only more prove my point because the ones I had were like some studies that Buzzsprout did maybe like 2 years ago, and I think it's only further gone in this direction. But if you get, I think what it is, it's literally like if you get 30 podcast downloads in the first 7 days, you're in the top 50% of audio. All podcasts. Yeah, with audio. YouTube is so different that I'm not sure what that, but if we're talking about audio, if you get 30, not 30,000, just 30 in a week, top 50%. And so you have those ones, which are the, when you go to the top 10 charts on any podcasting platform and they get millions or hundreds of thousands of downloads per episode. Those are like, it's not even the 1%, it's the 0.001. It's such a small number.
Unicorns.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are in a point where you're getting triple digits at all, like hundreds of downloads, I mean, you are well in the 90s. And then on YouTube, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, Alex won't see it because as it happens, I pay for the. Who do you use as your podcast host, by the way? We're with Podbean.
For audio, I'm Buzzsprout.
So I was just looking. We did one that went up last week. We've got 170 within the first week. So that's obviously hitting reasonably okay then. That's pure on audio because Alex won't have seen that stat. I haven't sent it to him. But yes, I mean, and that's generally what we're getting. And then it tapers off. It'll sort of gets there in about 7 to 10 days. And then, of course, it begins to taper.
Yeah. No, that puts you like well in the 90s of Alex, all podcasts. And then, of course, there's YouTube. So with video, it's a little different. I don't know how YouTube factors in with those numbers because obviously you have what you don't have on traditional podcast directories is like the algorithmic recommendation, the way that YouTube has it, where you can put out an episode and it could potentially blow up because it gets thrown in the YouTube algorithm. So things can get really skewed, but obviously that could be a good thing too, or I guess maybe a bad thing as well.
So on this season of your podcast, what is it that made you decide to go the video route? It seems a natural progression, yet you took your time. Is that just because you're a lover of audio?
It's yeah. So I
love radio. I would still rather be doing radio, truth be known. I love that theatre that you can create with radio, and that's obviously what an audio podcast does.
I love that, and I love the workflow. Like, I don't have to turn on lights. I don't have to turn on a camera. I don't have to brush my hair. I don't have it's way easier as like a solo podcaster with your own little home office podcast studio space to come in and like just make an audio episode. Video is a very different workflow, and dealing with the video files and uploading, like it's a tough workflow. And so what I wanted to do was wait until it made sense. Like, first of all, it just made sense with the things that I talk about and the things that I do. It was like, I do like to encourage people that they don't have to have video podcasts just because video podcasts are popular. Like, some people, audio just works best. Even on a video podcast, most people are listening to it most of the time anyway. But there's no doubt that in 2025, when you say podcast, I think a lot of people immediately think of video podcasting, or at least what that looks like. And so, especially with what I talk about, like audio and video production, it's like, it felt like I should be doing more of the thing that I'm talking about, which is cool because it also then builds my skills in the thing that I'm talking about. But I needed to find a workflow that was manageable, so I wasn't essentially making hour-plus long YouTube videos on top of my YouTube videos every week, because that just wouldn't be sustainable. So I needed to nail down a really good workflow that was similar to my audio workflow, but included video. And it took a long time to figure that out for me.
Mm. I mean, yeah, I feel that pain. I mean, I don't know what your workflow is. What I tend to do, I used to record the audio totally separately in Audition, but what I tend to do now, you're still using Audition, funny enough, is that I can strip the audio out from this file, then I can EQ it, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, so I've found, but as you say, there's always double that workflow going on, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
it is nuts. I ended up relying on Ecamm Live for pretty much everything, because I can just do it all through there. It does isolated recordings if I need to go back, but I try really hard just to do one take. So it's like preloaded scenes, transitions with music built into it. I do like a keynote presentation, sort of like 2/3 screen kind of thing. And I'm just like essentially running a keynote presentation and flipping through my Ecamm scenes during the show. And by the time I get to the last slide of the keynote, I know I've made it through the episode and hopefully it makes sense. I'm working on editing a video about that workflow now that I've done it, and I feel like I have a good handle on it. I did a video kind of rundown that explains it, so maybe people could cherry pick some things from it.
That'd be really valuable. I mean, we tried several versions of that. I mean, when we do it this way, it's a lot easier, but we've tried adding B-roll to this, and we tried in person with multiple cameras. My gosh, yeah.
So before Daniel came on board, I drove to Alex's, because that's got a bigger studio. So I drove to Alex and we did it there, and it was like 3 or 4 cameras, and then it was trying to sync up all the files. And if I forgot to leave the file with him and I'd come back, and then you've got this massive file, which is virtually no way of getting back to him. So we started off on Ecamm. Now, as you know, we're on Riverside. It just kind of works well. But something, I know Alex and I have talked about this in the past, is kind of the mental welfare side of YouTube. And I don't think that's something that should be glossed over, because I know very much you work, we all work alone, but I know you make podcasts with your wife as well. But do you find, having given up the day job where you actually got social interaction with a bunch, I mean, you went from family to feast. You were surrounded by people 8 hours a day, suddenly to, because Alex and I both being self-employed anyway, so we're kind of used to working alone maybe, but in different contexts.
Yeah, it was, I mean, the school I worked at had 2,000 students. I had 200 students it was just chaos for many, many hours every day. So the quiet and the isolation is not unwelcome. After that, I like this. But you're right. It can be, the danger there that I found is you can potentially lose perspective, and you can start to feel like the things that you're doing are bigger than they are. Like every little thing, if this video has a mistake, if something doesn't do well, if, anything, like you make a change on a website and you're like, okay, click publish, and you're waiting for like the whole world, like everything's going to change. And it's like, no one notices or cares or is going to see that ever. So maintaining that perspective, which is easy when there's other people around, like I could be in the zone with my teaching job or even with my YouTube channel. But then when I had to go teach all day, it's like, I'm not thinking about, channel stuff because I'm focused on something else. So having things, I have a lot of hobbies, fortunately, so that's good. And 2 years ago, I started learning how to play ice hockey, which is great because it is like, maybe this is the key with any sport. I've never really been a sports guy, but it's like the secret weapon to making friends as an adult, like in person, is join an adult recreational league. And that is cool because it's like, okay, it doesn't matter what's happening now. You're just here with a bunch of people hanging out, talking. Like, it reminds you that the world goes on and the world is existing, and anything you can do to kind of pull yourself out of it and get that bird's eye perspective of things helps keep everything in perspective, which is good for your mental health.
That's awesome. I've seen a couple of those videos actually, talking about perspective and bird's eye view. Was it like a GoPro you had on your helmet? How did you film some of that footage? I remember seeing that looked really good as well.
Yeah, I've done a few mic'd up hockey videos, and I use the GoPro suction cup mount and just stick it on the glass of the ice rink.
Oh, behind you. Oh, right.
Yeah. There's been a couple times, like if it's not an official game, I can actually like strap the GoPro inside the net, which is really fun. But during actual games, it's not allowed. So, cool. And actually, fun fact, they come out with new rules for like the American and Canadian like like hockey leagues, not the NHL, but like the recreational leagues come up with new rules every year. And this year, starting in August, players are no longer allowed to wear any kind of audio transmitters or recorders on the ice. So mic'd up videos like can't be done anymore. It's so sad.
Oh no.
They
during games at least. During practices and things. Yeah, I was getting too good, I guess. But yeah, I was just using my GoPro, which was awesome. And today, actually, I think speaking of companies sending stuff, GoPro's been amazing. I was gonna buy it because they announced it when they came out. The new GoPro was the anamorphic lens for a GoPro, which is supposed to be amazing. And mine gets delivered today because they were like, "We got it. Do you want it? We know there's no video involved." And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." Saved me $120. And I'd really love to do an anamorphic mic'd up hockey video. So
That'd
anyway,
be awesome. Yeah.
And I know we just talked about that bird's eye view kind of thing, and you do occasionally just decide to take a week off. So how easy is it to get caught up in the pressure of, particularly as you're doing it as a full-time gig now, I've got to upload, I must hit a video every week, I must hit a podcast. I mean, even because you go seasons with your podcast, 10 to a season, is it 12 to a season?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
And even then you'll decide, I just need to step away. There's just too much going on. So you don't feel, you haven't put yourself under undue pressure to make sure that you hit that every week schedule if it just can't be done. If you feel the show would be better for taking a week back.
Right. With the podcast, yes. With the YouTube channel, it's a little different. I basically never miss a week on the YouTube channel. And that's why the podcast, like, they just kind of rank, the channel is my number one priority. So if I need to spend more time working on channel stuff, and then that means I don't have time, especially because video, even a simple video workflow, is way more than audio. So if I don't have time to do that, then it's like, well, I don't want to force it. I don't want to do a lower quality thing that's going to end up living forever and being lower quality. So I'd rather just take the week off, take it off my plate, focus on the more important things, that I need to focus on, and then take care of that. And the channel, I try to always have several videos scheduled out in advance, like 3 or 4 videos ready to go in case something happens, or I just need that extra time. And then every once in a while, if I really am like feeling like I'm falling behind and I kind of don't want to dig into like my savings account of scheduled videos, I might swap out an upload for a live stream, maybe like 3 times a year or something. I'll do that. Just to kind of like buy myself a little extra time. And then also because live streaming is a really cool way to connect with the audience that if it's not my priority, it also kind of falls to the wayside. I don't do it as much as I'd like to.
So you live stream on the main channel, yeah?
Yeah. Not as much as I'd like to, which is why sometimes I replace a video with a stream, and it's just really fun.
I've rarely done it, but I think it gets back to this, because this I feel is really natural, a podcast, because it's talking, and it's that, again, it comes back to this warmth thing that you feel there's some empathy, there's some conversation, there's some feedback. And with the live streams, okay, yes, it's still clearly just one way, but at least you're getting live feedback, live comments. You're able to kind of chat via the camera in real time. So it's that halfway house, isn't it?
Yeah, and it also depends on your channel. I've watched live streams, especially from people in like different niches and stuff, where it's like rough. People, either there's not a lot of like viewer participation, or it does kind of become what Heather, my wife, and I call it, is like dance monkey, where it's just like, you're here for my entertainment, like do the thing, do something. And that feels so degrading, and that's not my thing at all. Fortunately, like, I don't know if it's the niche or just my channel or whatever, but the people who show up are like super cool. And so I can do an impromptu live stream and we can have really cool, in-depth, nerdy discussions about gear and techniques and all that kind of stuff that I just like, which is great because like Heather can only stand me talking about, cameras and things like so much. She puts up with it very, very well. But it's nice when it's like, okay, I can get all that out of my system with people who actually like also want to hear about it. And streaming's great because you never really know. When you do like a Q&A general stream, you never really know where it's going to go, and you get to have some really cool conversations.
It's such a, I mean, I haven't done one for about a year now, which is crazy because every time I do it, it's almost like going to the gym. You never regret going, but there's always that, oh my God, it's a bit of a hassle.
Perfect way to put
to
it,
get going. But I've never regretted doing it. It's such a nice way. Even if you only get a few people commenting, it's that that feedback, and I don't know. Which brings me to a question that I noticed as well on your channel, Tom, that you've opened, and I don't know when this was, but maybe it's always been there and I haven't noticed. But you've opened membership
Yeah.
I've got to the 90% of being ready. I just need to kind of go, right, do it. But I'm always reluctant because, well, first of all, I'm still not full-time on YouTube. So I'm kind of worried about committing to something. People are giving me money, especially if it's actual viewers. I would feel very bad if in 1 week I couldn't do something for them that they're paid for. And I don't know, how did you manage that? Did you plan to have like a members only type of content? Do you always release something ahead of time for them, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm happy to go into as much detail with that because I have had it for a while. I've put a lot of effort into it, and to be honest, it's not working.
Right.
Like, and I think that's important to talk about too, or at least currently it's not working the way I would want it to. I've had Patreon since 2018, and I've had also YouTube memberships since whenever they launched them. So that's been like 3-4 years now. And I've been doing both. And so I had the same perks on both. And it was just kind of wherever you want to sign up. I kind of leaned towards Patreon because it's separate. So I thought, like, if something happens to my Google AdSense account, this is a separate basket over here. I found though that it was when I wanted to do something, if I wanted to do a live stream on YouTube, if you have memberships, you can just do a members only live stream, and it's super easy, instant. You can even do a public live stream that's members only chat. Like, they have so many cool things built in. But if you're trying to combine Patreon and YouTube, then you have to do an unlisted stream, and then you have to like email everyone or post a message. It's very tough to wrangle. Like, if you want to post an exclusive video, you now have to upload it to 2 places. Like, it just was not an efficient workflow. And I noticed that I was trying to get people to go to Patreon, and in my case, they just weren't. But I wasn't even really talking about YouTube channel memberships, and they were just, people kept signing up for that. And so I was like, well, okay, if there's more features over there, it's more in line with what I'm doing, and people are just going there anyway. Like, let me just drop Patreon and focus only on YouTube so I can really embrace like the cool features that are there. And so I did that at the beginning of this year. Well, the end of last year, I kind of like transitioned over, and then officially only YouTube so far this year. And what you said is exactly true. Like, you don't want to, it feels weird to take people's money. And it also is this balance of like, you don't want to like promise more than you can deliver. Now I've given myself this extra job of like making so much extra stuff every week. So I try to be very realistic that like the main purpose of it is support, is to keep the channel going. I try to do like members only streams when I can. I have been, you can do like early video releases, which is super cool because YouTube will just schedule it. Like, you make it members only, and you just tell it when you want it to go public. And then YouTube actually even promotes it kind of cool. Like, in your channel, it says like members only or members first. So it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. You're doing a little like promoting for me. So it's worked really well. I've done stuff like that. So it's not crazy difficult to maintain. I put viewers' names at the end of videos. But when I say it's not working, the thing for me, and I don't know what this is, sorry about that.
That's all right.
The thing for me is when I looked at viewer support, what I don't want is like one person who's like ironically, like your patron, like the old days, like, I'm funding your channel, here's thousands of dollars or whatever. But I kind of do feel like, well, many hands make light work. And I follow a lot of creators that have like a couple dollar memberships, maybe $1 to $5 memberships, but they have like 3,000 to 5,000 people. And it's like, oh, okay. So you have a solid $5,000 a month, no matter what, almost like when I was teaching, and you get paid that thing. So it doesn't matter what your ad revenue is, if a video gets demonetized, if you don't have a sponsor or do have a sponsor, like, you have this baseline, and it's many hands make light work. Everyone's just kind of putting in a little bit. So nobody's like, putting themselves in hardship for it. And as people come and go, it's not like that one person who gives you thousands of dollars a month. Now they leave and you're like, oh my God, I'm ruined. It's just, if a couple people leave, couple people come, it's kind of, that's what I wanted, because that seems like a good road to independence, to not worrying, so much about like YouTube monetization or affiliate revenue or any of that kind of stuff. For me though, and I don't know what it is, I think I just have a limit on the number of people that will do memberships, and the amount of revenue that will bring in. And I just like cannot get past that limit. And I have no idea why. Tried everything. I've tried doing more. I've tried doing less. I've tried, all the stuff. And it's just almost like that's just what your limit is. Which when I say it's not working, it's like, It's like about 80-ish people, which is great. Like, trust me, I'm grateful for it. Which amounts to about $300 a month. Again, wonderful, grateful for it. That's also the equivalent of me selling one course. So like, when I look at it that way, it's like, okay, how much time can I afford
effort
to be
versus
spending?
benefit?
Couple of questions just came to mind. So the way you describe it, does the money ever that members pay, does it ever touch Google account, or does it get straight paid to you?
It gets basically thrown into your, and YouTube does take a bigger percent than, I think it's 35%. They would take a bigger percent than Patreon, which I believe is 10 or 15.
So it's similar to what they take on anyway on the general AdSense money is roughly what they take.
Same thing.
And then how much did you find, obviously with your channel having gone past 100K, with the podcast, is there much of a natural migration from your viewers there over to your podcast? Because clearly there's a big trip over in the subject matter, but I just wondered how different the podcast audience is to your main channel audience.
It seems to be like there is a lot of similarities, and I've only had the podcast YouTube channel for a few months. So, and I also like, this is why I never promote it. Like, it's like I put the links some places. It's not like at the end of every video I'm like, and don't forget, like, check out the podcast, blah, blah, blah. It's just like someone kind of has to dig to find it. And I know that's not how I should be doing that, but like, that's just how I do it. Because the podcast for me it is very much just a passion project. It's not a moneymaker. It's not a thing like that. So it's like, I kind of like that the people who find it did go out of their way to sort of like, and I guess YouTube now can recommend it broader, but like, it is kind of cool. Like, if you go through the episodes, there's not maybe as many comments as there would be on a YouTube video, but like, they're long, they're like paragraphs, and people are really, it's a conversation, and I get to take those and put those in future episodes. So it's like, again, that's the thing with podcasting. The numbers are smaller, but the quality of the viewer, the listener is like it's huge because they're really in it.
It is crazy. I mean, I found a similar thing with, I've got a Brazilian channel in Brazilian Portuguese. Same.
You have a
content.
Brazilian subscribers?
Yeah. So, a Brazilian. No, they're actually growing quite fast as well. You could get to a gazillion. But I found that they are sort of, I don't know, it's a completely different audience, even though it's about tech and it's almost the same video. I just replaced the A roll and a little bit of, the recommendation sometimes. But what you said is true. I think sometimes, if people who are subscribed to my English channel find me and they kind of can speak Portuguese or whatever, I very seldom sort of announce on one or the other about the two. So it's interesting when I get a comment that says, oh yeah, I found this, I was already subscribed to the other one, because YouTube somehow seems to find them. And
YouTube knew.
I like that is a kind of a organic way of growing. I think there was a giveaway last week where I did do a big crossover on Instagram. And surprise, surprise, when the Brazilians came in force, I got, I think, 100 new subs from that giveaway from Brazil. So it's not healthy because I don't think they will ever watch a video again. Yeah. It's interesting to see that.
Yeah. Having that organic audience that really they've really chosen to be there and to connect with what you're making, I think is really special, even if it's not growing as fast as, some of the other, it's not going to grow fast in a way that's going to catch anybody's eye really, but it's like, I think that's special. I think that's really sustainable. And that's the thing that helps you keep going for a long time.
Yeah. A couple of questions about your main channel. How long did it take you to find your voice and to find your delivery, to find how, presumably once you saw growth becoming more consistent in your channel, you kind of knew, I think I found what my viewers like. Is that kind of how it went?
Kind of, yeah. I would say it took a good 2.5 to 3 years to feel like I found a voice, maybe. Because I started the channel in the summer of 2017 and January of 2020, right before everything went really well. In 2020, the channel hit 10,000 subscribers, And so that was such a like astronomical number that I couldn't even fathom, that I just sort of felt like, okay, if 10,000 people are on board with this, I think I can just be me and just do my thing. And that's where like I was so worried about like wasting time before. You can go back and watch videos before then. And I mean, the delivery is different. Everything's kind of like, this is the GoPro Hero 5 versus the GoPro Hero 7, and I do really like the stabilization. Like, it's very chill, which is
sounds
bad.
like my videos.
I mean, that some videos, but for me, it's like there's no jokes, there's no goofiness. Like, it's very much like, I don't want to waste your time. Let me just like, I'm sorry you're watching my video. Let me give you the facts that you need. I'm sorry. It's kind of like the vibe. Versus after that, it was like, okay, I'm gonna make a video that like I would find enjoyable to watch. And maybe that means there's extra stuff that I could cut out, but that extra stuff is what lets it be my video and not anybody's video. So I started doing more of that, and that definitely connected. And then it is kind of funny because when the pandemic hit, it was just a thing where suddenly like everyone needed audio and video production equipment, and to figure out how to do some level of, audio and video.
As well, for, weren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was over here the whole time being like, I love being like a solo person who can do audio and video things, and it just kind of lined up. And so like, that was just, it was just kind of
a perfect storm.
I don't want to say fortuitous because it was all awful, but like, it gave the channel a very clear direction.
Yeah. 2020 is when I found you. Yeah.
The channel grew a lot in 2020. That's probably like the single biggest growth year, which makes sense. But it was kind of cool because it helped me hone the voice of like, okay, yes, audio video production, especially things that focus on people doing stuff solo, because you can extrapolate that if you're working with the team or you're doing something bigger. But the person who does need to be on camera, recording their audio, making it sound good, making it look good all at once while like trying to be present. That's a very specific type of person, and it seems like I connect with them really well.
And do you still experiment with your channel? I don't know how long ago this was, but you've done, I think it was like going to old school cameras, like VHS type cameras and things like that. And I know you've obviously got your hockey hobby, but do you still experiment with the channel when you're, I don't know, either you're running out of content or you're just bored?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe not. It might not be as evident, but I do try to do different things in pretty much every video, whether that's just like, it's something no one would ever notice. Like, I'm using a different lens here. Like, the camera's slightly, like just tweaking things around. But it's so funny you bring that up, because I have a pile of like retro tech that I've been wanting to like make videos on, but I do still feel guilty. Like, okay, we're talking about very useful practical things, and the next video that comes out is something that like you can't even buy it because they don't make it anymore. Yeah. It's like, it's just for fun. It is that thing of like, I don't want to waste anyone's time or confuse them. So literally just last week I was like, here's what I'm going to do. If it's all part of a series, which is basically just a playlist, but if it's like I have like a retro tech type series, then it gives context to things, and that way I feel less guilty about like, it's not just this random video about an old camcorder mixed in with other stuff, but it's like, oh, Tom's doing one of those like retro videos again, and
that's a great idea.
That helps. Yeah. So now I'm like more excited to start doing some of that stuff. But it is fun. Just last week the video that came out was one I made about the Rodecaster video, because it can do automatic switching where like you can match audio with video sources, and it will switch based on who's talking, but it will do it in a really cool natural way where it like, it's not robotic, and it adds in like reaction shots and things. Like, it's really good.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And so I had my wife come in, we did like a sample podcast, which I thought in my mind, I was like, this will be, 2 or 3 minutes. We just want to see what it looks like. It ended up being like 18 minutes of us just talking about ice cream. And I ended up, my main camera was my Sony FX3, so that you could see the Rodecaster video. Looks good, don't worry. But the A and B, or the B and C cameras were old Canon XL1s, so they were at like 480p. And it's funny because we cut to those and like it doesn't match, and I know that's not correct or whatever, but like the amount of fun I had just setting up those cameras, working with those cameras, figuring it out, seeing people get a kick out of like what it looks like in the videos, because it instantly looks like an old MTV thing or something. Like Like that's really, really fun. And to me, that was a cool hybrid of like, I'm talking about I'm literally telling you like the most cutting edge thing that like the most cutting edge video podcasting product can do right now. But I'm also folding in 26-year-old, mini DV cameras.
Retro gear. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I think that's quite unique, and I enjoyed it. So I think that's,
I'm glad you watched it. But it was, and the fact that it was so fun, you can see it in the video. Like she and I are both having a lot of fun, and I'm also like blown away by how good the Rodecaster works. So it's like, that's the thing where it's like, I don't have to sit there and sell you on a product and do the specs. It's like, I'm just having fun with this. And I feel like that translates, hopefully, where people are like, that seems cool. Like, I kind of want to do that. And I also like showing like, yeah, like the audio is still really good. So you see those old video things, but like the audio sounds great. So the lower video quality doesn't even matter really, because
that's such a good point. Yeah.
More important.
Do you still script your videos? Because I know
I was just going to ask that. Yeah.
One of the other things I bought from you, well, not from you, from watching your videos, was I don't actually use it that much anymore, but it was one of these teleprompter things from Elgato. Do you still?
I was just that was a video I watched, your Elgato one as well. Yeah,
I'm looking at both of you on that right now. So, yeah, I use mine every single day. It is one of the best things I've ever purchased. I sometimes, depending on the video, like if I have a real specific point I'm trying to make, or if it does happen to be something that is very like tech specific, where there's lots of specs and lots of like whatever, like I can't get the numbers wrong, then I'll lean more towards a scripted thing. And it also just saves a lot of time. Like when I have the time to script something out, instead of doing 45 minutes of raw A-roll footage, I can do like 20 minutes. So it really does make a difference. 9 times out of 10 though, it's just bullet points. And I kind of just go through the bullet points and, here's a bullet point, I'll extrapolate on that, or bullet point, extrapolate on that. And I feel like that is very natural. And then sometimes it is literally just like, I'm just going to sit and talk about a thing for a while. And that's kind of how that works. And so the prompter, I would say I use it on like 80% of my videos, even though a lot of times it might just be like a reference monitor or something. It's not necessarily like doing the script.
The words, yeah. I need to get out of I use it as a comfort blanket. I do read the script. I wrote the script and I read it. So I think I've tried it before as well with bullet points, or even sometimes just have something on the side that I can refer to. And people notice, but I just find it difficult. I find it much easier just to read. But
yeah, of course.
But I think
it is funny though, because something I've been, it's weird because in this space that we're in, I think I talked about this a bit on the podcast, but where things are very like AI driven and geared towards perfection, those like imperfections that normally
nobody's perfect idea.
Yeah, I feel like those are more valuable, like the things you might have wanted to avoid or cut out. So like literally even having like just a notebook of your bullet points sitting on the desk with you that is obviously a notebook on your bullet points, it almost like makes it more real, like when I see someone that just has like a glass of water next to them, I'm like, oh yeah, I get thirsty too, like because you're not an artificial intelligence, you're a real human. So it's weird because in the past I would have been like, no, you don't want any of that kind of stuff happening or in the frame. But now I'm like actually kind of folding back the curtain and showing the seams of everything a little bit. I think is valuable in a different way now than it was just a few years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, because YouTube's gone in such a direction now and again, something you talked about recently is super high end, people shooting on 8K Reds and, they are mini movies. And there's a certain point you actually, what made me first fall in love with YouTube was that I felt I was stepping into that person's room with them for 12 minutes and I had company and it felt really organic, genuine. Yes, I want to look at something that's well produced. Clearly somebody that's thought about what they're talking about, but equally what I don't want to watch is 20 minutes of a movie that's just too perfect and doesn't relate. It's got no warmth to it and it's got no soul. And that's kind of that balance I think we're trying to all strike and make it something that's visually attractive and engaging, but equally just not dry and
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's, and in, like anything that involves like tech or audio video, it's like part of it is like you like part of the fun is figuring out how to make things look and sound better. And so it's weird when you're like, oh no, it looks and sounds too good. Like, what do I do?
Yeah, I wish.
But yeah, there is that balance, and a lot of that comes down to just how you're contextualizing and framing things to your audience. You know, like I was actually thinking about this last night. I was thinking about why there are people who, you will see them with, say, near 1 million subscribers on their channel, and they'll make a video that, like, I'll see someone post like, "Oh, my video's not doing well." I don't know what that means. Everyone's different. Maybe it only got a couple tens of thousands of views or something. But for them, it's not doing well. And I look at the video and I go like, that is the same video they would have made years ago when they were, 3,000 subscribers. Why is it different? And I think there is that difference of, like, it's not even just production quality, but there's something about when you connect with the person, it feels very human, and you see them leveling up in their own way. Like, oh, look, they did get a new camera and things look better, or wow, they really like went out of their way to invest in that new camera and in buying that new gear. And you kind of feel like you're rooting for them. And there is something which is like, you could definitely say it's unfair, but when I've seen when people get really big, even if they're doing the same thing, then it's like, well, now I'm watching someone with 1 million subscribers talk about their $6,000 camera they got. So now it's like, now you're making me feel bad and you're bragging about it. Whereas the same video from a smaller channel is like, wow, I can't believe you had the courage to go out and like invest in something like that. And so it's a strange thing. It's like your relationship, your position with the audience changes over time, in addition to how the world is changing with, what people see and don't see. All that to say, fortunately, I think it's a good thing now, at least for the time being a little rough around the edges, being a little imperfect and human seems to have a lot of value. And that's good, because that's a lot easier for people to do.
Yeah. I like that. I like the idea of, people will know there's a human behind it as well. It's kind of kind of good. I like to record sometimes, just even if it's like a 30-second clip outside, just to talk about whatever, just to break the scene a little bit. And those are not scripted because I can't carry the teleprompter out there. So because I'm coming up with my own words and whatever, there's a lot of like stutters and errors and whatever, misspelling of things, mispronouncing. But I think, like I said, I think those things, I should probably do more of it, because people like
it. It feels like you're watching a person. You're like, oh, I mean, you connect with people, right? And then that person can still look good and sound good and, like, have really nice B-roll and stuff, but it's like, it feels like it was made by that person. And I think that's really special.
It's something we touched on in last week's podcast, actually, about the way that our viewing habits have changed on YouTube as viewers of YouTube. And that sometimes some of those big creators that you watched years ago have just become a little bit too unpersonal, and there's no interest. You want to feel, and I think we certainly, Alex and I and Daniel were talking about it, and sort of saying those channels that are that little bit smaller, where you feel that you're actually, as you just said, invested in that person, and your view actually matters a little bit, and your point of view matters a little bit. You just feel that's kind of where the roots of this whole platform were, and I think that's why I enjoy watching those kind of channels more.
I think it naturally happens with smaller channels, but I will say that one of my favorite channels is from a guy named Scott Kramer, and he's like in the entertainment, like commentary-ish kind of niche. So it's not related to what I do really at all. Other than that, he likes microphones a lot, and I know he watches my videos because microphones. So he uses like different microphones in every video and stuff. But like nobody cares because that's not at all what his niche is. But he's coming up on, I think, 900K, almost 1 million subscribers. His videos do phenomenally well. Like, he does 1 or 2 videos a month maybe, but they are, way more views than I'll ever get on any video. And it still feels very much, it is just one guy. Like, it is just him, living in a small town, making videos. And you can feel that it's still just one person doing it, even though the channel is huge and the numbers are huge and the audience is huge. He didn't lose it. And there's a few other things. There's a musician named Mary Spender who has a channel. I think she has like 700 something thousand subscribers. She's great. And her channel still feels super, the production quality is high, but it still feels very much like
very cozy.
Like it's her channel. Yeah, it's very personal. So sometimes people don't lose that. And I'm always curious, like, how, and maybe it just comes down to the person. Some people just are different and handle growth differently and stuff, but it's something I'm really interested in when I do find the larger channels that haven't lost that feel. And it's not faked. It's very genuine, very authentic. But it still feels like the personality of a smaller, more intimate channel and community.
Yeah.
I'm very conscious of the time because I know you've got a meeting to be getting to. So I'm looking at the time, thinking we need to get a wrap on this for you, so you're not under pressure from us.
It's a bummer. This has been a really fun chat.
Well, we'll do a Mark II. We'll do a Mark II
Okay.
anytime. It's fantastic. We'll try and get the time zones worked out better this time.
Yeah.
At least I was going to say we're on one time zone, but in a few weeks' time, of course, we get British summer times and it screws everything up all over again. And the one thing I was determined to mention to you, because I know this will appeal to your audio geekness, years ago when I first started this one, as a little podcast, just sitting by myself, minus 16 was because that's the LUFS roundness for Apple Podcasts, as you know. So that's why it was called minus 16, because at my heart, audio is always my thing. Video's this weird thing to me. I can never get my head around it quite, but frame rates and all that, I don't understand it. I really don't.
Audio is, I would say, even more important than video.
I love the audio side of it has always appealed to me. But anyway, Tom, we've got to let you go. We're definitely trying to sort out Mark II.
Thank you both so much. It was really fun to get to talk about this stuff. I appreciate it.
Lovely. Thanks, mate. Cheers. See you soon. Bye.